Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Today we continue speaking about the Commonwealth and the Restoration. In terms of politics, this is an age, an era that is so restless, that is so messed up in so many ways. Because for the first time in the history of modern England, we see the king executed.
Yes.
And for the first time, England is ruled not by a king, but by a ruler who does the job. Probably, maybe he was better than the king in many ways. But again, politically speaking, historically speaking, the removal of the king, he wasn't only removed, he was executed. Remember, we've seen this in literature, we've seen this in Shakespeare. And this is how interesting how literature prepares people, fiction creates reality in a way or another, prepares. But no matter how many times you see the king dead, killed, on stage, when it happened, people were shocked in so many ways because the idea of the king and the monarchy was deeply rooted in the mentalities, in the mindsets, in the minds of the English people. Cromwell rules for about 10 years. He was successful, powerful. We've seen people praise him, marvel, and also John Milton and many other people wrote good poetry about him, praised him in a way that, again, people praised the kings and the queens before. When he was old, when he passed away, when he died, he was followed, again, ironically, by his own son. That's funny. Remember, I said, in a way, it's ironic because you remove the king because of corruption and sins and vices and deterioration and breakdown of many things. But when a ruler comes, this should help pave the way, prepare the people to a democratic process of choosing their own leaders and their own rulers. However, his son came after him and he was so weak. I think no matter how good he was, he wouldn't be good enough because he can't be compared to his father. And that's called the Commonwealth. Oliver Cromwell, and then his son about 11, 12 years. However, he was followed with the death of Cromwell and the rule of his son ended abruptly because the people decided to bring the king back again. So Oliver's son, I don't know what his name is, excuse me, just go, we want the king. We can't live without the king because the king gives us security and safety, provides us with the protection, and because the king is part of our culture and tradition and literature and society and life and mentality and many things. We said in this era, literature has become highly political. Remember, there was nationalism, the strong sense of the English identity and nationalism in poetry before, where you love England, you love the Thames, you love the Queen, you praise the Queen. We've seen Spenser praising, the fairy queen. But now there's political division. Poetry is political in the sense that there are two political parties and you side with one against the other. Now, imagine this. Many people, including poets and intellectuals, sided with the Commonwealth, with Oliver Cromwell. When he died and the king was restored, they were in trouble. They were in real trouble. Some of them were arrested, some of them were punished in a way or another. But we spoke about Andrew Marvell before. Andrew Marvell became a politician himself. He started as a poet, but later on he ran for it and he was a member of the parliament. And although he was a member of the parliament, he was almost arrested. John Milton, our friend here today, was arrested because of his support to the Commonwealth. Some say he could have been executed or he could have spent a lot of time in prison, but it was thanks to his friend Andrew Marvell that helped release him. And that's not all bad. Because in prison, he wrote some really good literature. And Milton, by the way, when he grew up, he started to lose his sight and eventually he went blind. Still, he wrote some of the best English poetry ever. Today, we'll spend some time, a journey with John Milton, a major 17th century poet. A poet who was in many ways trying to have influence on the whole English literature. He wanted to be as famous, as influential as Chaucer himself. And interesting how people always go back to Chaucer just to, if they want to do great things. And he wanted English literature to compete, to be independent of Europe in many ways. So he wrote several texts. We'll mention some of them. We'll study probably in a way in bits and pieces, two of them. The first one is Paradise Lost. Paradise. You know Paradise?
Yes. Heaven.
Heaven, yeah. What does this translate into the Arabic? How does it translate into Arabic? Yeah, Arabic. Faqt al-Jannah is not poetic. It has a poetic translation in Arabic. Close. Al-Firdaus. Al-Mafqud. Because you're not studying translation yet. When you do, you will see how sometimes you change a little bit so you give it the poetic sense. Firdaus al-Mafqud. And later on, he wrote another text called Paradise Regained. You know regained? It means?
Have it back. Yes.
Restored. The restoration. And then the third text is called Samson Agonist. Have you ever heard of Samson? No. Samson. The text takes place in Gaza, by the way. So the guy is Gazan like us. Yeah, Samson. Does it ring a bell? Samson. There's a character in SpongeBob. Samson. No, not the Simpsons. Samson.
Shamshun.
Yeah, Shamshun, that's it. Shamshun al-Jabbar, we know this. Yeah. But we'll talk about it probably this class, if not the next class. So, John Milton again wanted to do something great, to write an epic poem. Epic poem, a very long poem about important issues, important themes, important characters, important myths. At the beginning, he thought of writing something about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. You know why he chose this particular text? Because everything about it is pure English. And I don't know why, but he dropped that idea. But again, notice how he's intentionally, consciously planning something. Because he wants to write. This is not a sonnet. It's a poem. The Paradise Lost is about 10,000 lines. 10,000 lines, Paradise Lost. That's an epic poem. What is it about? Do you have any idea? Paradise. Who could be the main characters? The characters in
Religious man, maybe.
religious. Who?
The king.
King. Bigger than that. He's more ambitious.
Adam
And Eve. Who else? The devil, Satan. And angels. Demons. Who else? More significant. More God. This is how ambitious he is. So, but it's funny because these are not English people and the events don't take place in England. But still, this is an English text. A major, epic English text poem. Which shows his attempt to do this. So, the major characters in Paradise Lost are God, Satan, Adam, Eve. You should be familiar with these names. So we have Adam, you know Adam already, and Eve. This is Eve. You know, Christmas Eve. Eve, God, Satan, and we have God. And this takes place in heaven, paradise. There is Garden of Eden. You know, Garden of Eden, Jannat Adan, right? And then we have the original sin. What's the original sin? This is a Christian term, by the way. The original sin is when Adam and Eve disobeyed God and ate from the tree of knowledge.
Yes.
Tree of
Knowledge.
Shajarat al-Ma'rifah. In Islam, we're not sure whether this is an apple tree or what. In Christianity, it's mentioned that this is an apple tree. In Islam, it's not stated whether it was Eve who started, munching at the apple, the fruit. In Christianity, it's not about that. It's also who you blame more. In Christianity, it's clear that Eve starts munching at the apple, right? That's why there is this thing that many religious people do this, like they accuse women in general of committing the first sin and causing the fall of Adam, the fall of humanity. The fall of humanity. From heaven to earth. From mercy to sin. Very interesting stuff. The fall, fall down. Because of the original sin. Because now, we know the biblical story. It's similar to the story we have in Islam with tiny little differences. In Islam, again, both of them, Adam and Eve, are to blame. And sometimes Adam is blamed more. But here, in Christianity, we have something different. In the text, he takes the story, but he changes it a little bit. When you read the story, I'm not sure if you can read 10,000 lines now that you have midterm exams, but who knows? Maybe you can watch some extracts or a dramatization on YouTube. When you read the text, you will find that, you will feel that the author, John Milton, in a way humanizes Satan. Sometimes presents Satan as the hero. Sometimes equally blaming God, Adam, Eve, and Satan equally for what happened. And that's why the text is controversial. You know the word controversial?
Yes.
Controversial, debatable. Some people don't like it, some people like it. Some people disagree with many things. So why does it create controversy here? Because
he changes the thoughts and
he changes the Christian idea by one, presenting who as the hero?
the antagonist.
The antagonist, Satan. In Islam and in Christianity and other religions, Satan is the embodiment of evil, the pure evil. But here he's not. You feel sorry for him. So if you're reading this and you feel sorry for Satan, it doesn't mean you are evil. Or you are, it means the author is smart, is genius. We do this. We watch Hollywood movies. Not sure, did you watch The Sniper?
Yeah.
Sniper is a horrible movie about an American soldier, war criminal actually, who kills over around 150 Iraqis. Some of them women, some of them kids, some of them innocent civilian people. You watch the movie and you feel sorry for him.
It got really popular.
Yeah, you feel sorry for him in a way. You don't have to feel sorry with him, by the way, because he's a murderer. But that is how influential literature is and movie production is. Makes you, change your attitudes and sympathize with people usually you don't sympathize in real life. So this created a huge controversy, still does. Many Christians, for example, don't like this because they see that the author is equally blaming not only Satan, not only Adam and Eve, but also God. Like this shouldn't have happened. Some people, by the way, read the whole thing as an allegory of the Commonwealth and the Restoration. So the Commonwealth is, heaven. And because people don't do a good job after Cromwell, they fell down, they fall. And then the king is restored, where the restoration here represents earth and sin. Because after that, after the Commonwealth, the guy was not doing a good job. Later on, in a way, Adam and Eve go down to earth, to the unknown, to human knowledge. Later on, he wrote another poem Just so you know.
Paradise
Paradise regained. In which, in Christianity, how is paradise regained? What do you expect?
Maybe Adam and Eve are God.
No, later on, after Adam and Eve.
Humanity is back to
How? Who leads humanity to regain paradise?
the king. The king?
No. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Because Jesus Christ suffers for humanity and leads humanity from sin, corruption, vices, to virtue, to salvation, back to heaven. And that's why it's regained. At the end, I'll tell you the story of Samson, Agonistes. So let's go through Milton's Paradise Lost again, step by step. Unless someone has a question to ask. Please.
What is the difference between allegory and symbolism?
Generally, an allegory is a longer story, a bigger story. Like the whole story could be an allegory. But symbolism could be part of. So this is the basic thing you need to know. Okay. So if you're writing a story, and in your story there is a dove. The dove symbolizes peace, love, purity, right?
Yes.
Snow symbolizes purity, whiteness, etc. But the whole story could be an allegory. But also you can discard it as symbolic, like where, for example, you have animal characters, but they don't have to be animal characters. Like you have characters who refer to something else.
Yes.
So this could be an allegory because everything here
Symbolize.
could mean something else, like the Commonwealth and the Restoration. But in the story, the apple or the tree, the apple here is a symbol of what? Of the forbidden, of sin maybe, because the moment Eve bites the apple, everything turns upside down. So, this is Milton again. In many ways, he links the Renaissance, the age of Shakespeare, and later on, with the Commonwealth and the Restoration. He lived in all these turbulent times. He was very ambitious. Why? Because he wanted to be one of the great or the greatest poets in English literature. Mainly like Chaucer, always Chaucer. Someone asked me, why not Shakespeare? Shakespeare is the greatest literary figure probably ever. But Shakespeare is a dramatist. And you'll ask, but drama was written in verse. So it's a little bit different. That's, verse, but still as a drama here. Okay? Of course, he was engaged in politics, writing essays about religion and many other things. He became the Latin secretary to Cromwell. This is how close he was to Cromwell. And it's because of this he later on was arrested. When he was blind, started to be blind, eventually he wrote Paradise Lost. I should add the inverted commas. Don't forget this.
Yes.
He wrote Paradise Lost.
He was blind.
Yeah, I think it took him some time, but eventually he went blind. And I know many people who study, in Arabic literature we have blind poets also. Not Taha Hussein wasn't a poet, he was an author.
Yes.
Bashar bin Board, I think Abu al-Ala al-Ma'ari, was he blind? No. Abu al-Ala al-Ma'ari, are you sure? Anyway, so maybe you study comparative literature in the future. You compare how blindness does something to literature and how, because there are so many references to the fact that he's blind. There is, I think, a poem he wrote on his blindness. Okay, so Paradise Lost is a major epic poem in English by John Milton about God, Adam, Eve, Satan, and the fall of mankind. Now the question is, why did Milton write this? This is actually poetry from Paradise Lost. At the beginning, in the opening, he addresses the audience. He tells them why he is engaging in writing a 10,000-line poem. What do you think? He's saying to assert eternal providence. Providence means, do you know what providence is? Providence means basically that there is a God, and that God is taking care of us all, and eventually everything is going to be fine because there is a merciful, just God. So to assert, to make sure, to convince people that, to assert eternal providence and to justify the ways of God to men. Whose job is it to do this, generally, in life? Whose job is it to assert eternal providence and to justify the ways, the means of God to men? Prophets, yeah. It's usually a prophet who does this, to assert eternal providence, to tell people there is a God and God is merciful. Yes, God sometimes tries us. In a way, we're punished sometimes. We suffer sometimes, but this is for our own good, to justify the ways of God to men. And this is how ambitious he is. So in a way, he's claiming, assuming the role of the prophet. Prophet, you know what a prophet is?
Yeah.
Nabi, like a messenger. So he knew he's doing something great. He knew that, and indeed he's one of the greatest English poets ever. Okay? Can you answer this question? Don't look here. Why did the text, I could ask you this in the exam, why did Paradise Lost cause controversy? Please.
Because he shows different thoughts which the society was used to.
Very good. He contradicts the Christian beliefs. How? Can you give examples? Yes?
He presented Satan as...
Sometimes as the hero. How? Because he challenges God. God tells Satan, kneel. And he says, I don't want to kneel. Leave Adam and Eve alone. I don't want to leave them alone. And he tempts Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge. What else? There is another reason here.
that he puts God, Adam, and Eve at the same level.
Same level of blame. They're all equally to blame, equally responsible for this. Okay? But there is a discussion here about freedom of choice and good free will and freedom of choice. Are we destined to do something, or can we choose our own destiny? Here, yes, we can choose our own destiny. At the end of the text, this happens. Someone read, please. Yeah, please.
One word was all before them were to choose their place of rest and provided
Providence.
Providence, their reward. They hand in hand with wandering steps and slow.
Through Eden took their solitary way. Who's they here and them? Who are they? Adam and Eve. This is at the end, eventually, when everything goes as it goes here in the poem. Adam and Eve walk hand in hand, not to God's mercy, not back to heaven, to providence. They go back to human knowledge, to the unknown. In many ways, this symbolizes the Renaissance, how the Renaissance was trying to break the barriers, to break the rules, to push the barriers, to go, perfection, to seek perfection. We've seen this in Dr. Faustus. He wanted unlimited access to knowledge. But how did the whole Renaissance end? It ended in disillusionment. It ended in decline. It ended in criticism. It ended in censorship. It ended with the execution of the king and the closure of the theater, remember, by the Puritans? So in a way, they're going to the unknown. Disobeying God takes you to the unknown. But in literature, this is sometimes a good theme because you choose your own future. So the world was all before them were to choose. They could have, chosen differently. Their place of rest, rest and peace, heaven, and providence, their guide. They, however, hand in hand, still stick together. With wandering steps, slow steps through Eden. And this is really heartbreaking. So this is, like, I imagine it this way. This is like, if this is heaven, how they go back down to earth. So they have to cross all the way through heaven where they see all the beauty and the rest and the providence, and they determine and they go. They choose because of the original sin we saw. Through Eden, took their solitary way, the unknown. And this is a theme here, of the theme of the unknown. Where is humanity going? Where are we going? We're going to the unknown. This is very ambitious. And at the same time, very sad, very heartbreaking, very risky. But I can't tell whether Milton is promoting this or condemning this. What do you think? From this, do you think Milton wants us to be this adventurous and this risky? Or is he telling us, see, if you disobey God, if you don't follow the rules, you're going to end up with the unknown?
But he's blaming God.
Yeah, so?
It's blaming God. I think he's saying that you have to, I don't know.
What do you think? You don't have to know. What do you think, generally?
I think the first place, he blamed God. But I don't think that he wants us to obey God. When he put God as the antagonist.
Okay, but not necessarily. It doesn't mean, listen, in literature generally, I said this before, literature usually, or sometimes, doesn't seek to give us answers, but to raise questions. That's one.
Yeah.
In literature, we don't usually have pure evil or pure good characters, because literature is usually focused on the gray area. If the movie is about a family that is too good, it's boring. Or too evil, sometimes it's frightening. There's too much evil there. It's about good people who do bad things, bad people who do good things. So, interesting. You ask a question, would I do the same? If I were in their position, would I do the same? And it's interesting because we see how people react, how good people sometimes react when they want to do evil. It's very interesting. There's a movie I watched, it's called Death Sentence. You know what it means, death sentence? Sentence. In this context, what does sentence mean? When you say somebody was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Sentence, it's a time a criminal spends in prison. Life sentence, حكم مؤبد. Death sentence, حكم بالإعدام يعني. A movie called Death Sentence, really beautiful movie. It starts with, again, a beautiful family, the perfect family, the husband, the wife, and the two kids. One of them is very, promising, very ambitious. He has a very good job. They're rich, they're comfortable. And after like 10 or 15 minutes, the son they loved the most was killed by a gang member. How would a loving father, a peaceful father, a father who has never touched a gun, would react in this?
Who would become an evil person.
I'm not going to spoil it. It's one of my top movies, actually. Try to watch it. Really interesting stuff. But again, until this moment, I asked myself, how would God forbid, how would a person who's not into revenge and fighting and everything react? Movies and literature, they give us these scenarios. And that's why they teach. When you see the conclusion, the ending and how it ends, probably you say, okay, I'll do the same. But it gives you a whole story, a whole world in front of you where to choose. What should I do? Should I leave the law to take its course?
When you lose someone you love the most, you wouldn't wait for the law to take your revenge. You would
But
do it
is that
yourself.
good? If we do
No,
this,
it's
the
not
whole
good.
world is going to turn into a jungle. And
But you wouldn't be okay if you didn't do this.
we should. Because, there is this thing in our hearts about revenge, but literature teaches us to forgive.
You might be the
to be-
kindest person on earth,
But
if
still,
someone, if
It's
something-
it's your right to feel angry
Yeah.
and to want to take revenge.
But
But
it's
if you
not
want to
survive.
kill somebody because to run, so
You
like
might not.
like Shylock, if you want to do, we discussed this in another class, I think. Would you do like Shylock? Would you insist on taking a pound of flesh to take revenge? You say it's his right because he was attacked. He was, many times.
But in this case, he doesn't. The revenge wouldn't be killing. He might take revenge by something else.
By slapping him,
No, maybe by doing the same to him. By doing.
like what? He killed someone. You killed someone.
No, I don't know. I don't think that.
At least but that's where when we have if we have a good legal system where criminals can be punished as they should be, at least you don't have to go there. Anyway, think of this, please.
I think he's promoting hearing to unknown because he said hand in hand with wandering steps. There was no, he didn't mention there was any disagreement between Eve and
And that's the best thing about Adam and Eve, by the way.
Adam.
There's no, not sure, in Islam, in Christianity, I'm not sure we have this in the text, I'll have to go back to it. Adam and Eve were the perfect couple in a way. They're not, you know the odd couples that are always fighting, like our parents, sometimes they're always, fighting over trivial things. We don't see this, although this is the most serious thing. Sometimes you do something and then the wife gets at you, the wife does something and the husband is angry and everything. What a perfect couple they are. Hand in hand, slowly wandering. Despite the fact that they lost the most important thing a humanity has ever lost. Paradise, providence, being close to God. What a good couple.
But they were the only ones on the earth. Maybe for that they wouldn't leave each other.
Yeah.
For no reason.
So if I leave, but still you fight a little bit, because fighting doesn't mean the end of the war.
Maybe they fell.
Maybe they did, but it's not in the Quran or the Bible or in the text. And this is how literature doesn't give us everything. It leaves gaps for us to think. But yeah, interesting how you think that at least when they take the decision, they take it together. Hand in hand. Adam is not leading him, and she's not pushing him. They're hand in hand, they are equal to the other. Okay, now in Paradise Lost, we have a lot of very memorable lines. So neither Adam nor Eve is to blame because they are all equally to blame. There are several memorable lines and descriptions, descriptive passages, descriptive stanzas and poetry in Paradise Lost. One of them is a description of hellfire. Dungeon. A dungeon is a dark place like a prison. It's where sometimes you describe the prison as a dungeon or a particular room. I don't like to sit in this room. It's like a dungeon. Dungeon is a dark place where you sit in. Could describe a prison, but here it is used to describe hell itself. And notice how horrible, how spooky it is. This is very close to the Bible and the description of the religious text here. So hell is horrible on all sides around as one great furnace. Do you know furnace? We took it before, furnace. What is oven? What's an oven? You don't know an oven? But furnace, where did we come across furnace before? All the world is stage. There was the furnace, the lover, the fighter. It's like a furnace. So you know what a furnace is like? There's fire all over the place. Flamed, yet, and again, see this paradox. There's a paradox here. If there is fire, yes, there is heat. It's negative in this sense. But fire means warmth, and sometimes it means, what do we have from fire other than warmth? Light, thank you very much. But this is not an ordinary fire. This is hellfire. Yet from these flames, from the fire, no light, but rather darkness visible. It's funny that you say darkness visible, because darkness is darkness. This is fire that gives darkness, not light. Isn't that the most horrifying thing ever? So when someone tells you, it's dark, okay, I can light some fire. But fire there doesn't give light. It gives more darkness. We have this. Usually religious texts do this all the time. لأن في القرآن من الأشياء الجميلة في the Quran, شجرة الزقوم على سبيل المثال. We all hear about شجرة الزقوم. This the food of the sinners, the people in hell. In the Quran, there is a simile, and usually a simile and a metaphor brings things closer to our imagination. So someone tells you, have you ever tasted or tried cheesecake?
Yes.
No. What does it taste like? It's like ice cream, but it's far, far, far better than ice cream. Interesting, delicious. فشجرة الزقوم طلعها كأنه تشبيه فإحنا we want to know كأنه رؤوس الشياطين. So this fruit in hell, the fruits there on the trees look like the heads of devils. We don't know what they look like originally, right? So something spooky with something even more terrifying. And this is the religious text, and he's doing this. So this hellfire is all dark. Yes. It's a furnace, flame. But do we have light? There's no light here. Please.
I think this stanza supports the idea that the stanza before this one.
Yep.
It supports the idea that he's advising us to obey God and listen to Him. So
Because
the fire
eventually,
and flame.
if you don't, you're going to be there.
Yes.
So he's terrifying us.
Yeah. You have to obey
In a way.
God.
Another extract I liked is when he describes Eve.
So
Maybe someone wants to do a presentation on this, how he describes Eve and how he describes Adam. You know, you have to do a presentation for the course assessment. This is Milton talking about Eve. In a way, he's saying Eve is the most beautiful woman. At that time, you said this, there were no women, no men. So, of course, she is the most beautiful woman on earth. But he compares her to even more beautiful creatures. Okay? Soft, she withdrew. And like a wood nymph light. You know wood nymph? What's a nymph? Nymph? زي الحورية يعني.
goddesses.
Yeah, like goddesses. Like purely beautiful creatures living in heaven. Those imaginary creatures, the creatures we imagine all the time. The perfect creatures. So she withdrew, she moves, she behaves, she acts like a nymph. Light. Betook her to the groves, but Dahlia's self in gate surpassed, and goddess like deport. She looks like goddess. She's a goddess. She's a nymph. She's beautiful. She's perfect. So maybe you want to see how the text talks about, but here notice the description is mainly physical description. Are there any references to her mind, or is this the case? Like a woman has to be beautiful and that's it. More important than her mind and her intellect. Look into the text. If someone is interested in this, to do a presentation, you can look into this. Maybe you can see how Adam is. So maybe Adam is not described physically. Maybe he's more into the mind.
Maybe he described her mind when she ate
the apple. We'll see. Yeah, we'll have to go back to this and see what exactly he said about her, how she behaved, what she exactly thought. I'll conclude this with more memorable lines. We have 1, 2, and 3. 3 again, beautiful, very some of these, by the way, have become English proverbs. We use them all the time, and sometimes we don't know that they are from Milton. Sometimes we use so many things from Shakespeare and Milton and John Donne and everything. Especially this one. I like using this all the time. So farewell hope, and with hope farewell fear. So farewell. You know farewell? Goodbye. Goodbye to hope. But if somebody loses hope, you have nothing else to lose. So you don't fear anything.
Yes, you don't have anything to lose.
And usually they say you need to fear someone who has nothing to fear. Beware of a person who has nothing to fear. Because if you have no family, nobody to love, no home to live, no country, nothing, everything is threatened, everything is taken away by occupations or by something, this person is very dangerous. Why? Because sometimes we want to do stuff, but we are afraid maybe we're going to go, we'd go to prison, we'd be arrested because, and then my wife and my kids and my family and my job and my students. But if you have nothing to lose, no one to love, no family, no job, you would be fearless. And it's good in a way, and it's also bad in another way. Number one, long is the way. Notice the word order here. The way is long, but that's poetic. Long is the way.
We have a long path.
And hard. It's not only long, but also hard. That's life. Life is hard. Life is so long. That out of hell leads up to life. It's like the way to heaven is not an easy way. It's long, it's hard. حفت بالمكاره. It's very difficult. In a way, when you read this, you think it's from the Bible, by the way, because of the religious nature of the text, because he assumes this role. Finally, someone read the last quote, please.
Just are the ways of God, and justifiable to men, unless there be who think not God at all.
Okay, someone else, please. Yeah.
Just are the ways of God and
Justifiable.
to man, unless there be who think not God at all.
What does it mean? What does he say? What does Milton say? Yeah. What is he thinking?
I think he's talking about prophets, how they give us the message of God.
Okay. So what message is he giving to us?
The ways of God.
So what about them? The ways of God are?
They are correct.
They are correct, they are
Uh,
just, they are fair. God is fair.
Yeah.
Sometimes you suffer,
But they're
but
fair.
this suffering is good for you.
Yeah.
Because eventually
Rewarded.
God is good, you rewarded for this. So generally, remember to assert eternal providence and justify the means or the ways of God to men. He's doing this just, and again, notice the word order here. There's emphasis on
Just.
originally, the ways of God are just. But it's interesting also because if you follow the path, you will finally go to God. It's the end of the sentence.
Yes.
If you follow the long and hard way to heaven,
You will
and you
skip
know
that.
it is just, you trust God, you obey God, eventually you will end up. Just are the ways of God and justifiable to men. It's easy to see that God loves us, even if we suffer. However, there are people who will not see this. But what kind of people?
Would not believe in God.
People who originally don't believe in God. So if you don't believe in God,
You would never see this.
you will not see justice. You will not see that even if you suffer, eventually you will be rewarded, whether here or there, in the hereafter. Okay? So this is, in a way, basic brief. I know, because this is an introduction to English literature, we take like little things about, but I hope my lectures, or the lectures, or the stuff in the book also, helps you, to see something in literature, to love to do something more about literature, to go back home. If you don't, I know you don't have much time, especially these days with the exams coming up, please go to YouTube and watch some videos about these. Or go Google famous quotes from Paradises. You will love what you see. You can do this for your extra portfolio. So after this we have Paradise Regained. I have probably 2 or 3 minutes to speak about Samson Agonistes. I'll be very brief. Maybe we can continue this after that class. Samson Agonistes tells the story of an Israelite, Jewish person. Israelite, not Israeli, Israelite. God sent him to help the Israelites because they were sinners, to protect them against the Philistines. You know Philistines? It's people who were living in Palestine at that time. Philistine now, in the dictionary, is a negative word. It means a person who doesn't appreciate art, and we can hopefully talk about this later on. The Philistines were the enemies of the Jews, the Jewish people. So, Samson was a fearless, powerful person. So strong. that he could sometimes kill 1,000 Philistines with only something like, I don't know, a rubber. In one story, he kills about, I'm not sure how many, but hundreds of Philistines only with a donkey's jaw. You know what a jaw is? Jaw? This area is called a jaw. So a dead donkey's jaw, he killed hundreds of people armored with swords and with arrows and everything. One time he was attacked by a lion, and with his bare hands he rips the lion into pieces. So powerful. And now, one Palestinian woman from Gaza named Delilah. Still have the name. Means it Delilah. No, seriously. I know people all with the name Delilah. Delilah, Dalal, Dalits. Most of this. Dali more modern. Dalal, Delilah. So Delilah, he falls in love with this Palestinian woman from Gaza. This is the famous extract. This one is taken from the story, the poem. It's a poem or a drama, depends. Iris in Gaza. There's a book, someone named the book Iris in Gaza. It's taken from this reference, and it's from the Bible in a way or another. So Delilah, he shouldn't fall in love with any Palestinian woman. He shouldn't deal with it. But he does, and this is a sin in a way. Yes. And she was like, Samson, why are you strong? Samson, tell me your secret. Samson, she keeps nagging and nagging and nagging and nagging and nagging. He doesn't want to tell her, but eventually he does. Yeah. He tells her it's because of my hair. This is Samson, and he had this long, curly hair. And see, he has like, it's the same story. And
she cut her.
The Philistines come, he was asleep, and they cut his hair. He's now hairless, they chain him. He tries to, break the chains, but he's powerless now. He loses his power. They arrest him, they put him in a temple, and they gouge his eyes. He's now blind. Interesting. Blind Samson, blind Milton also. But because the Philistines are backward and stupid, presented this way, they forget about him, and his hair grows by time. At one moment, the Philistines are gathering because of some kind of celebration, and Samson destroys the whole temple, killing himself and killing all the Philistines. And that's the story of Samson. It's in the Bible, it's biblical, but it's part myth, part fiction in a way. Unless we believe that there are, we see sometimes people with supernatural powers that can drag, lorries and trucks with their teeth
with their ears.
They're trained. They were not born.
Okay, so this is the story of Samson. If you are interested in doing a presentation about this, maybe you can think of how Delilah as a woman was represented, or how the Philistines as the others, as the enemies were represented. Because in a way they were the natives here in Gaza, like us here in Gaza. Maybe someone wants to do more history research and find out where this took place in Gaza. I was kidding with the other class, and I told them Samson is from Shudaiya. Some people said no, maybe he's from there or somewhere. So look into this.
Hey, where my camera?
Very interesting poet. I'll stop here. We can continue discussion later on and after. Thank you very much. Good luck.